I have been on the Oberlin admissions team for 22 years, and I am the mother of two sons who are both in college right now. So I'm going to be talking to you a lot tonight from my own experience being a mom, but also over 26 years of admissions work. I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Sophie Metler-Grove. She's going to be handling a lot of the Q&A stuff for us, curating questions, and then she'll appear to tell you a little bit more about Oberlin a little bit further into our time together. But I'm just glad you've joined us here tonight. We are so excited to talk to you about the Oberlin, not necessarily the Oberlin essay, but the application essay, because personally speaking, this is one of my favorite parts of the application. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that I have some visuals and you don't have to just stare at me all night. So let me make sure. Can you all see that? Awesome. So as we go through this, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. Like I said, Sophie's going to be doing some work on the back end of this as I'm talking. So if she can answer anything, she's going to take care of some of that, and I'll take care of some of the other things on camera too. So
Leslie,
what I'm hoping tonight is
share.
that you're going to take away a better understanding. You don't? Okay,
Sorry.
Let's see. Let me figure this out really quick. No, I'm glad you said something before I did this. Let's see, share screen. This is the other reason I miss my kids being away at school, because they're sort of like my tech support. Mm-hmm. And let's see if this works better.
I see it now.
Is that working now for you, Sophie?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, good, all right. I'm glad I wasn't halfway into this presentation and somebody piped up about that, because that would have been really tough to go back to. So like I was saying, I'm hoping tonight you take away a better understanding of how admissions officers look at an admissions essay, and maybe take away some good tips for you to help you write your essays. So before we get to kind of some nuts and bolts, I'm going to start with a question for all of you. If you could be any arachnid, which would you be, and how would you use your new skills to solve the energy crisis? Of course, I'm not expecting you to answer that, but I think there's a perception out there that the college essay is meant to make applicants jump through hoops. We are aware that writing the essay is a little nerve-wracking for some students, and sometimes one of the more dreaded parts of the application process. I've been in college admissions for 26 years, and at 3 different institutions, the longest at Oberlin, but I'd say on average I read about 1,000 application essays a year. So it doesn't take a math whiz to realize that I have read roughly 26,000 admissions essays. I've read many good and some not so good. I think every officer that I know keeps a folder of our favorite essays. And if you think about my 26,000 essays, I want you to put a number in your head and take a guess how many you think are in my favorites folder. And I'll tell you the big reveal, it's about 30. So for you non-math whizzes out there, that's 0.11%. That does not mean that the thousands of others I read were not well written or insightful. It just means that they didn't strike a chord with me in particular. And remember that just because I happen to like an essay doesn't mean that all of my colleagues will as well. People who come to the admissions world as a career don't go to college for a particular major in order to study how to be a college admissions officer. So on my staff alone, I am joined by a colleague who has a PhD in medieval Jewish history, an engineer, a colleague who worked in the food and farming nonprofit sector. I have a background in psychology. So we all obviously have our own tastes, so don't think that your essay is always going to resonate with everyone. But do keep in mind that even with all of our different tastes, I think every reader does not like poorly proofread, unfocused essays that don't comply with the rules of standard written English. So I saw a recent survey of 14,000 college-bound students to see what they thought was the most challenging part of applying to a college. And the hands-down winner was writing the application essay with 48.6% of the votes. Harder than taking a standardized test, and remember this is pre-COVID, so I know that's hard for everybody at this point, but this is pre-COVID. So harder than taking standardized tests, and many times harder than even deciding which a college to apply to. So why is the admissions essay so daunting for everybody? I think too many students begin the search of what to write about by asking, what does a college want to hear? I think the thinking goes something like this. If I can figure out what they're looking for, I can make myself look like that, I'll improve my chances of admission. Don't psych yourself out by thinking the essay has to do all the heavy lifting in your application, because it's only one of many pieces in a holistic review. So don't try to second guess what's going to impress an admissions officer. We answer many questions about the role and the purpose of the essay. How much does it count? How do I know if something is significant enough to write about? What should I write about? Just remember that we're not looking for perfection. We're really looking to get to know the human being that's behind the roster of activities and all of your grades. I think a large percentage of the essays that I read contain what I would call maybe a MIC essay. They're usually a 5-paragraph essay that's technically correct, it's organized well, it has the correct sentence structure and spelling, but it might be a little bit boring. So sort of like a Big Mac. I have nothing against Big Macs, right? But the one I eat in Oberlin is not going to be fundamentally different from one I eat in Orlando or Omaha or Okinawa. I'm probably never ever going to rave about the quality of a particular Big Mac because they're all the same. So the same can be said about the generic college essay. If an essay starts out for me as I'm reading that says, I've been a member of a band and it's taught me leadership, perseverance, and hard work, I can almost recite the rest of the essay without reading it. So understand that we'll learn not only from how you write, but what you decide to write about or your topic. So we received an essay several years ago from a young man who wrote about his success at reaching like level 15 of some apocalyptic video game. He shared in great detail his method of slaughtering warriors or zombies or space aliens, whatever he was battling in this, and the hours that he spent polishing his craft. There wasn't anything wrong with the writing. Technically, it was fine, but the lasting impression that we all had was someone who seems to spend a significant amount of time in front of a gaming screen by themselves. And we had a really hard time picturing how he might engage with the people at Oberlin and take advantage of all of the opportunities that we offer him. So in this case, it was certainly a poor choice in topic. So I'm hoping you're going to think of the essay as an opportunity rather than an ordeal, right? This is the one thing in your application that is completely under your control. It gives you a chance to provide a dimension of your personality that we really can't learn from test scores or grades, from teacher recommendations or lists of activities. So to that end, I want to share with you what the essay prompts are for if you're using the Common application. And I've certainly pared them down quite a bit and didn't give you all the words that you'll see when you log into a Common app or a Coalition app or Questbridge site. But the array of topics here that you're going to see is deliberately pretty broad because they want to be able to appeal to a wide range of college-going seniors. So in a nutshell, here are the prompts. You can share your personal story. You can share a story of personal growth. Tell us how you learned from some kind of obstacle, how you solved a problem, when you challenged a belief. Tell us what captivates you, which is kind of open-ended. And then, of course, the most open-ended of all of them is the topic of your choice. And the percentage you see behind some of these topics here are the percent of students who actually chose to write about that topic in the last admission cycle. So you can really see what the most popular is. So the personal growth is big, as is your topic of your choice and sharing your own story. So remember that each topic here is going to ask you to hone in on one area of your experience and let the admissions officer get to know you through that particular experience. Remember that every prompt here is going to ask you to write about you and your perspective. I can tell you from a lot of personal experience through the years, students will tend to write about a grandparent who they love dearly, who had some amazing life experiences that they want to share. And at the end of reading the essay, I want to admit they're grandparents, but I haven't learned anything about a student. So make sure that the focus is always about you. I'll tell you, somewhat of an admissions expert, though, I think there's really no such thing as a completely unique topic. Have you done a mission trip to a third world country that included multiple transportation modes, Animal Crossings, and flat tires? I've probably read it. Family drama, where you display tremendous patience, empathy, and wisdom beyond your years. Check. I can tell you that I have never ruptured my Achilles tendon, but I can tell you exactly what it feels like after reading essays for the last 26 years. So the list kind of goes on and on. You know, if you had a coach or a teacher who turns to be an advocate for you, there's the sports analogy about life, triumph, and failures. I think I've read them all. Your energy should really be directed at answering why you're telling the story, not just the what of the story. So why is it important? Basically, like a so what factor. Why should we care as admissions officers about the story you've decided to share with us? I do think getting started is probably the hardest part. As I told you, I have two sons who are now in college, and I can tell you from their experience, they had several ideas that they thought about writing about. They tossed a bunch of things off of me. We bounced ideas around. They would start writing, change their mind along the way. That's okay. I have a colleague who works with students does nothing but work on admissions essays. She makes every student she works with write at least one or two sentences in response to all of those common essay prompts, figuring that this kind of gets your creative juices flowing a little bit, and often that lets a student realize what story they feel they want to continue telling. I think the best advice I can give you is to tell a real story that gives us one slice of your life rather than trying to summarize your life in 650 words. 650 words is really not a lot when you start telling a very involved story, and you might find yourself having to pare it down quite a bit. So realize that this does take time, and you're not going to be able to dash it off in one sitting. So please, please, please don't wait till the last minute to get this started. I am going to move on to some very specific examples to go through some tips and that sort of thing with you. But let me take a quick pause and see, Sophie, if we have any questions that we should address right now. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A.
So there's been a couple of questions. I think one that would be relevant to answer now is, how can you show that you've grown as a person through an essay about what captivates you?
I think sometimes you have to get a little creative maybe, and realize that those essay prompts, you don't necessarily have to stick within that small box, right? You can have overlap in those. I think when you complete your essay, you have to check what response what prompt you're responding to. When we're reading your essay, we're really not looking to see what the response is. We're just starting to read whatever story you present. I don't know, Sophie, if you feel any differently about that.
No, absolutely. We want to hear your story and why that matters to you and what you've gained from that experience.
Right. Other questions? Or
one more that we could answer now is, this student says, how personal is too personal, such as mental health challenges, etc.?
So my recommendation for students when they ask this question is not to focus on use your personal essay to focus on that. With the applications, with either the Common App, the Coalition App, the QuestBridge app, you have room to provide additional information about yourself. And I think unless you really want the whole focus of your essay to be about whatever challenges you're facing mental health-wise, use that additional information section to share that, and choose something else for your personal essay. If you are going to choose to write about mental health with a personal essay, I think what's important for admissions officers to realize is that you're in a good space now, that you've got coping mechanisms, or, we're not going to have to worry about you too much when you get to campus. We want our students to be successful and to do well. We don't want to worry about you from the very beginning because you've shared this story with us, but not told us that you feel fully capable, ready to jump into college life. So my best recommendation is use the additional information session for that.
I think that's great for now, Leslie.
Anything else now, Sophie? Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to dive down a little bit deeper in terms of giving you tips about writing your essay. And the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is spend time on your introduction. You need to use your introduction to get our interest from the very beginning. The first sentence that you're writing is what journalists call the hook, right? This is the sentence that reaches out from the page and grabs our attention. A good hook doesn't necessarily always mean that a good essay is going to follow, but it does mean that the reader is going to look forward to seeing where the story is going to go. So I know with Zoom, there is, under the participants tab, there's a raise your hand. So I'm going to go through a couple introductory sentences, and I'm going to ask you which ones you think you might be excited about reading. So the first one is, this is my family and me. If you're excited about reading this one, I'd like you to raise your hand. Not seeing too many there. Okay, let's look at another one. Currently, I hold a job at Moz Brothers that lets me interact with people outside my own immediate environment. Again, show of hands, who's excited about this one? Not quite as many, right? How about this one? I've been kicked in the face by a cow at least 4 times in my life. Okay, I'm seeing some more hands go up. Awesome. I'm intrigued by this one, and I feel so sorry for the student who had to write this because I can't imagine what that feels like to get kicked in a cow, but I want to know what happened, right? So this is a good hook. It's really making me want to get into the student's story. Here's another one for you. It's not every day you're under investigation for murder. Okay, I see some hands going up. So yeah, this is one, could go either way. It's a little risky, I think, to start off because I was worried in the beginning, like, why would a student be under investigation for murder? But the story unfolded, everything was fine, but it certainly did intrigue me and get me excited about reading the rest of the story. Let's try this one. From the time I was able to realize what a university was, all I heard from my mother's side of the family was about the University of X and the great heritage it has. Okay, let's see hands. Not quite as many, seems a little dry. And again, this is the sort of thing where I would want you to own the essay, not something that your mother's family is telling you about an institution. And then the last one. My mom said that I couldn't have a girlfriend my junior year so that I could focus on my studies. When summer rolled around, I finally found someone. She was 94 and we met once a week. Hands are up, right? Yeah, this one's very cute. And actually, this one is just about volunteering at a senior center. So there are a lot of ways that you can take time to introduce your topic in kind of a creative way that makes us excited about getting to know your story a little bit better. The next thing I'm going to recommend to you is that you use the vocabulary and writing skills you already have. I find that readers who stumble are really often trying to dazzle us with style rather than concentrating on substance. So in trying to make a topic sound maybe a little more intellectual, students resort to a thesaurus. And for some reason, students think that big words make better essays. So take a look at this one. It's a lot of words on the screen. This is 2 sentences. And I'll just read a little bit of the beginning. The intrepidly tranquil and adamantly benevolent summer breeze blew betwixt dimensions of splendor and perfection as its sweet saccharine scent crippled any rational desire to ignore its inexorable allure. If you're like me, you're like the little guy down at the bottom. What is the student trying to say? And in this particular essay, when I read the whole thing, I did have to use my dictionary to try to figure out what some of the words meant. I mean, I tend to think I have a pretty good vocabulary, but in this case, I couldn't even figure out the meaning of the word from the context of the sentence because I was so lost. Now, if you do talk like this all the time, then maybe this is rolling off rather naturally for you, but I think for the bulk of us, this is a little bit of a stretch to say this is how you would naturally be speaking. I think it's fine to choose what I would say is a common topic as long as your perspective is distinctive. So a good essay is not good because of the topic, but because of the voice. I think sometimes the simple things in life make really good essays. I've read some great essays about a subway ride to school or what the family goldfish has observed about the student and the family from its perch on the kitchen table. It doesn't have to be a life-changing event to be interesting and informative. So I'm going to show you 2 different examples here of students who chose to write about their work experience. The first one says, in the 2 summers of my high school career, I worked at Ben & Jerry's. I learned how to manage money, deal with customers, and manage a store. I think a lot of that is pretty intuitive for anybody who's ever had a job, especially if you're in customer service, that these are the sorts of things you would be doing. Fun fact, though, Jerry Greenfield is an Oberlin graduate who is Jerry of Ben & Jerry. So we were kind of excited about this one because of that little connection to Oberlin. But in general, I don't think this is one that really gets you too excited. But try this one out. Ah, the fantastic aroma of my freshly opened paycheck. The first tangible benefits of my adventures in capitalism added up to just over $100. My first job didn't exactly bring out my inner scholar, but it did pay for my gas and romantic endeavors at the local theater. So a different take on how to write about having a job. Like, I think this one was really, really refreshing for us in a lot of ways because it wasn't super straightforward. You could tell there was going to be a good story coming up. So again, if you're going to write about something that's a little more common, like if it's a job or a summer camp that we read a lot of those essays, you do want to have your writing be refreshing. Your essay should not be a summary of your high school career. I think you need to use an experience to set the stage that you're going to illustrate something about yourself. But I think many applicants make the mistake of trying to include all of their accomplishments and their activities into their essays. The college application gives you plenty of space to list your jobs, your community involvement, your extracurricular activities. So don't use your essay to repeat the information that we are already going to see someplace else. We want to be taken behind the details that we already know. I would say assume we've read your list of activities and your honors and don't repeat those. So for example, if you're taking a photography class and you've had photos published in the Lit Mag and you are the photography editor of the yearbook, I would ask you, why would you write your essay about photography? I think I'm perceptive enough at that point to realize that you really love photography, but you're missing out on an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about something we don't know about you. So a thoughtful and detailed narration of a time in your life tells far more about you than a whole list of activities that you've been involved with or honors that you've won along the way. Your grades and test scores are going to show us that you're smart. Use the essay to tell us that you're thoughtful and mature and that your personality has depth. We all heard the saying, picture's worth 1,000 words. This is almost the reverse of that, right? 650 words is going to paint a picture for us. Remember that you only have 650 words, so you can't tell your whole life story. We ask you to paint a picture with words, but I want you to be careful about your choice sometimes. Sometimes some significant things that have happened to students can be a little stomach turning for some of the rest of us. I remember when this essay came in and the whole essay is about this, I only had visions of this poor dog that had been killed by, or a horse that was killed by a dog. You don't want to gross out your readers, so think about how you are illustrating your words, what's kind of going through our minds at that time. Definitely avoid telling us what you think we want to hear, and instead be yourself. Get your facts right. So hopefully you caught that Louis Armstrong is not the person who landed on the moon in July 1969. He was a great jazz musician, but Neil Armstrong was our first astronaut to step on the moon. So again, I felt like when this came in, it gave us a good laugh in the admissions office, but you don't want us laughing at your essay for this reason, right? I'm going to harp a little bit on you about proofreading. So I want you to proofread, then ask someone else to proofread for you. Although we want substance, I also want to make sure that a student can write a paper for our professors that's not going to have a lot of careless mistakes in it. And if you read this essay, the opening to this essay that's on the screen, you're learning about Julie Taymor, who's an Oberlin alumna, who's best known for her costume design and direction of The Lion King on Broadway, not The Loin King. Loin is a word, and spell check will not catch that for you. So again, this is where I think having somebody else take a look at your essay is really important. Other things, grammatical problems, punctuation errors, and spelling mistakes can be really distracting and make your essay kind of difficult to understand. They do show a lack of quality control and care maybe in your written work, and your success in college partly depends upon strong writing skills. So remember, don't rely on spell check, have somebody else read it. Someone told me once, if you're worried about your spell checking, read your essay backwards. So this first sentence would be incest of, smell, the, love, I, because you're going to catch words that are wrong that way because you're not putting the sentence together in your head. It's nonsensical going backwards. I don't know if that works, but that's just a tip someone had passed along to me. I do have some pet peeves when it comes to essays. Essays should not be littered with misspellings or grammatical mistakes. Remember, this is not a text or a tweet, right? In other words, it's not a casual conversation. If you laughed out loud, you need to say that. You don't LOL in a college essay. The other thing that we're finding, I think, with a lot of texting and tweeting going on, people aren't capitalizing proper nouns anymore. And I'm super old school. I do text, I do tweet, but I do know that the word I should always be capitalized. Your city that you live in should always be capitalized. So make sure that you're paying attention to some of the standard written rules of English that go into essay writing and not go into text writing. So after you've gotten this wonderful essay together, remember that your conclusion is going to be crucial. The conclusion is your last chance to persuade the reader or impress upon them your qualifications, In the conclusion, avoid summarizing what you wrote earlier in your previous 400 words. The essay's not that long that we would have forgotten that, so don't feel like you have to give us a recap. Take that ending to finish strong. So remember that essay I showed you earlier about the student who was working at the sandwich shop. This was the conclusion to that essay. My boss looked me in the eye and declared, "John, you think too much. This is a place for making sandwiches. Go to college to think." Of course he was correct. I was instantly enlightened. I must take my thinking elsewhere. But where shall I take it? I can tell you when we read this, my colleague who presented this application read this essay. She read this part, we're all like, "To Oberlin, take it to Oberlin." We were so excited. It was such a great ending. Open-ended, of course, but that student did end up coming to Oberlin, so we were very excited. And we actually went to the sandwich shop that he works at, and we toasted him with a chicken carbonara sandwich, which he wrote about in his essay. So lots of reasons to make sure that your conclusion is critical, because this is what we are remembering about you. This is our takeaway moment, basically. I do think I'd be remiss if I didn't quickly address the pandemic and how you might be tempted to write about that. The Common Application, the Coalition Application, and the QuestBridge application are all giving you space to address how you may have been affected by COVID. And this quote after the first bullet point is taken from the Common Application. Your college counselors are also being asked to detail the impacts that the schools are having based on the pandemic. So if you do decide to write your 650-word personal essay about this, realize it's likely this year to be a very common essay topic. So writing a full-length essay may lead to more blending than standing out. That being said, if you may have been impacted in a truly unique way, and then you should feel free to write about that. But with this extra space that the applications are giving you, I think it's a very missed opportunity to not address something about COVID there. You can talk about positive things that you've done. I've talked to a lot of students that have really done amazing things because they can't be in school, ways they brought their community together. Share that with us. It doesn't necessarily have to be that COVID impacted you in a negative way. Turn it into a positive if you're able to. So I hope after all this, you take away some advice that is impressed upon you. So write about yourself. Regardless of the topic, make sure that you are the person who shines through your essay. Use your own voice. I can tell the difference between the voice of a 40-year-old and a high school senior. Colleges want to hear your voice, so be you. Parents, if you're out there watching this, resist the urge to over-edit. My own children did not let me see their college essays because they were afraid I was going to turn them into my essay. I mean, you'd think with all my years of experience, they would have taken advantage of that, but they did not. Focus on one aspect of yourself. If you try to cover too many topics in your essay, you'll end up with a resume of activities and attributes that don't tell us as much about yourself as an in-depth look into one project or passion, maybe. So keep that focus on you. This shouldn't be a story that you observe, but something that you actively participate in or played a central or pivotal role. Write about something meaningful and describe your feelings, not necessarily your actions, because that's going to make it different if we learn about how you felt about something. If you do that, your essay is going to be unique. I've read, like I said before, many essays about family members, and when I'm finished, I want to admit that person. I can't do that, of course, so make sure I care about you and your story. I think a good tip is to initially write from the heart and then later edit as if you were an admissions officer. Put it all out there, see what you think, get some advice, and then start editing back and view it with the lens of somebody who doesn't really know you and what you're leaving them with. Tell a good story. Show me why you're compassionate. Don't start off your essay with saying, "I'm a very compassionate individual." Don't say, "I've overcome great obstacles." Tell the story about how you've overcome that. So there are ways to get at all of these things that are about you. But again, don't make it so over the head that this is what I'm going to tell you. Let us infer some of this after reading your essay. Don't repeat what's in your application. We talked about that with the photography example. Tell me something I don't know about you after reading the other parts of your application. And then finally, ask someone to take 2 minutes to read your essay. Take it away from them and ask them what you wrote about. Did they get what you were trying to get across? Think about this. If your name wasn't on your paper and someone found it on the ground at school, would they be able to tell who wrote it? That's how you know that you've kind of hit a home run there, that someone says, "Yes, this is you. I totally picture you. This is a great story about you." Otherwise, if it's like, "Gosh, I'm not sure what you were trying to tell me," or this sounds like 20 of my friends, then it's not necessarily unique. And multiply that out by application pools of thousands of students writing about the same thing. So take advantage of your friends, your English teachers, your college counselors, parents, anyone who knows you well, to give you some kind of feedback. So with that, Sophie, I'm going to stop sharing my screen with all of, let's see, how do I stop sharing my screen? I didn't do it yet. There we go. Stop sharing.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, everybody. That was so wonderful. And I appreciate also all of the questions that have been sent in through the Q&A box. Keep those coming in. We are now just going to take about 5 minutes to present a little overview about Oberlin and overview, if you will. And then we will go back to answering your questions. So it's 7:31 my time. I promise that we'll have at least 20 minutes for questions after we're done with this portion about Oberlin. And continue to send those questions through the Q&A box as they come up. So thank you, everybody, for being here. As I said in the beginning, my name is Sophie Metler-Grove. I'm part of the admissions team at Oberlin. Oberlin is a small liberal arts and sciences institution in Oberlin, Ohio. We have 3,000 students at Oberlin. We are completely undergraduate in our student body. 2,300 of our students are in the College of Arts and Sciences, and 600 of our students are in the Conservatory of Music. This small size of 3,000 students allows an individual focus and a strong sense of community, coupled by tremendous opportunities and choice academically and extracurricularly for our students. Oberlin is known for having a rigorous curriculum, progressive values, and tremendous accolades in the arts. We've been committed to being an accessible institution since our founding as the first college or university in the United States to admit women, first college to admit students of color, and we've been admitting international students since a year after our founding. Here's our location. We are located in the state of Ohio. We're in northeastern Ohio, about 35 minutes from the city of Cleveland. Cleveland is sort of a medium-sized city, and Oberlin is a small town. Our students really get the advantage of the best of both worlds. The coziness of a small town where they get to see their professors through town and enjoy coffee shops, bookstore, bakery, theater, and a real sense of community. There's not really a sense of where the college ends and the town begins. There's a real sense of integration between the two, as the college and the town were founded in the same year, 1833. So the sense of being part of a greater community and a tight-knit community, but also the advantage of being close to the city of Cleveland and having the advantages of access of big cultural attractions, big city cultural attractions in Cleveland. Cleveland is really seen as an extension of our campus, a place where students go for fun, as there's 3 professional sports teams in Cleveland, the largest theater district outside of New York City, and access to the Great Lakes, one of the Great Lakes, Lake Erie. But students also go to Cleveland for academic and professional enrichment. The Cleveland Clinic and Metro Health Hospitals are located in Cleveland, and the Case Western Reserve University is there as well. So academically, Oberlin is a liberal arts college. We're deeply rooted in the liberal arts, teaching students how to think, not what to think. We have a real focus on academic freedom, students learning in an environment of incredible choice, allowing you to have real agency over your academic path. We have no required classes. You get to choose to study what interests you. We also have a real focus on learning by doing or experiential learning. 65% of Oberlin students engage in research, academic research, during their time at Oberlin. So despite the fact that we offer almost 50 areas of study, 65% of our students are engaged in research. That means regardless of what you're studying at Oberlin, students are asking questions and solving problems, and doing so alongside PhD professors. Because we are a completely undergraduate institution, you're not competing with other students. You're not competing with graduate students for these opportunities. In the last couple of years, we've had over $5 million on an annual basis in grant funding to support student research, with about half of that funding coming from the National Science Foundation. This is a list of internships that our students have had in the last couple of years. We expect that Oberlin students have internships during their time at Oberlin, and we have a very active career development office as well as alumni office to help you think about your career goals and to be able to develop relationships in the field as well as experiences in your chosen areas of study. Oberlin students are passionate and creative, and one of the ways that OBs spend their time is making music. We have a conservatory of music at Oberlin, as I mentioned in the beginning. This is a professional school of music, and the best part of the conservatory of music is that it's open to all of our students. So any Oberlin student can take any classes they want to in the conservatory of music, can minor in the conservatory, you can take lessons in the conservatory, music lessons, you can use one of the 150 practice rooms, you can play any of the over 200 Steinway pianos that we have on campus, or attend any of the 500 concerts we have per year. That's 500 concerts per year in the academic calendar, so about 2 or 3 concerts a day. There's a lot more I want to tell you all about Oberlin, and there's a lot more to share. I will enter in the chat in a couple of minutes links to some of the virtual programming we have. We have several info sessions available per week that you can attend virtually, as well as themed panels and other events as well. You can also sign up for a virtual interview if you are interested. So a lot more to share with you about Oberlin and to connect you with your particular interests and goals and how you can pursue that at Oberlin. But on an admissions note, I just want to mention that Oberlin reads applications holistically. We read every part of your application and of course look very closely at that essay. We have recently announced that we will be test optional for the upcoming 3 years. So if you are applying at any point in the next 3 years, we do not require the SAT or the ACT, and we are truly test optional. I also want to mention that we meet 100% of financial need as an institution. So that's all I wanted to share about Oberlin at this point. But now we are here to entertain all of your wonderful questions for the rest of the time. So I think Leslie and I will sort of go through these questions and answer them to the best of our ability. Please keep sending them into the Q&A. So I see the first question that I see on my screen, Leslie, is it true that oftentimes our essays will not be read past the first couple of paragraphs? I think in keeping with the holistic review, we really want to get a good sense of you, and we do our best to read that whole essay as well as the rest of the application.
I will say Sophie's answering that obviously for Oberlin. Some other institutions, that might not be the case for them, but definitely at Oberlin, we read your whole essay. We don't stop reading it because we might be missing out on some really good story or getting to know you better, so we want to give you the benefit of that doubt. So we read the whole thing.
Is it bad if an essay doesn't mention a specific event in your life? Certainly. As Leslie mentioned in one of her first slides, there's a lot of different essay topics that you can choose from. And some, it's certainly relevant to talk about a specific event or something that happened to you, and other times less so. So it's about you telling us what you want to tell us in the essay, and that can take a lot of different forms, as Leslie expressed through the examples.
So is not having a hook a total no? No, absolutely not. I mean, not everybody has these amazing writing abilities to do that. But when I say a hook, it's just something to start off your essay strongly, right? It doesn't have to be you were under investigation for murder like that one student. I hope most of you haven't been. But it's just something to get our attention in a way that lets us get excited about getting to read the rest of your essay. So you don't have to have a quote. You don't have to have this amazing weird out-of-body experience that you're going to share with us. You just need to have something, a good first sentence, if you want to think about it that way.
I love this next question. Selma asks, how could I demonstrate my interest in Oberlin through the essay or otherwise? So the essay that you're going to be submitting for the Common Application is actually going to be viewed by every college that you apply to. So if you So it's a little tricky to write a common application essay that's geared towards a specific school, as other colleges are going to be reading that. And of course, it's a turnoff for us if we read an essay and in it you're saying, this is why I want to go to the University of Texas at Austin. We may love your application, but we're kind of now feeling like, are they really going to come to Oberlin? Are they really committed to applying to Oberlin? So the essay itself isn't the time to specifically talk about your fit with that school. It's the time to tell us more about yourself and, add real depth to your application. But there's other ways to demonstrate your interest in Oberlin. Attending these events, attending this event tonight is great. Doing an interview, being in touch with your counselor. We're doing a lot of virtual events through high schools and college fairs. If we do one that you're attending, stop by and say hi to us. So I'd say attend virtual events, be in touch with your counselor. And if Oberlin is a top choice school, apply early decision. If we are truly one of your top schools or your top school, that is the best way to demonstrate your interest in an institution. The common application is less so.
So the next question is, I'm taking my third gap year out of high school. Should I write about the things I've done during this time, or I could choose a meaningful moment that happened, for instance, in my high school, even though this happened some years ago? So on the application, if you have not gone so traditionally right from high school into college, you've taken a gap year or several gap years, there's a part in the application where you're asked to explain what you did during your time off of school. So you kind of have the benefit of giving us 2 essays that way, which might sound like a lot more work for you right now, but you're getting to tell us 2 different stories. So you can write about all the cool things that you've been doing, what you've learned as the response to if your education has been interrupted, or you can choose to focus that on your personal essay. I would say that the call is really yours, but if it was me, I'd probably do 2 different things almost, because we get to know that much more about you.
The next question is, do we have to write a standard 5-paragraph essay, or could we change up the format? You do not have to write a 5-paragraph essay. Almost all of the essays that we receive are, several paragraphs in that kind of form. We have received poetry or other kinds of creative work. It's a great way. The essay itself is a great way to demonstrate who you are and sort of paint a picture. I would just say, if you want to deviate from a standard essay, just make sure that your point still comes across and we're still going to get to know you and that you're achieving the goals of the essay.
And I'll just add on to that real quickly. I mean, I remember, and this is back in the day, this is showing how old I am too. We used to get paper applications, and I remember a student wrote her essay in a spiral because it had something to do with not knowing where she was. But for the reader to have to keep turning the paper like that to read was really tough. So going back to one of those questions earlier, I did not read the whole essay there because I got a little bit dizzy doing that. But I would say, when you're trying to get creative, I wouldn't get too creative with this, with the format of your essay, because most schools, I think, often turn those essays over to your academic advisor so that they have a sense of your writing ability. And so we want to be able to show them that, yes, you do know how to write an essay for college, and that we just didn't take a haiku and say, yes, the student is great.
Is it a bad idea to begin the essay writing about a coach/mentor and then expand into a broader theme? We always talk about sort of the cliche of the athletic victory essay. And while that is something we joke about, it can still be done and done well. I mean, you've had the experiences that you have, and if there is a coach or a mentor or an athletic sort of a victory or challenge that is really significant for you, you can tell us that. But just make sure it's about the why of what you're saying. So talking about a coach or mentor, that can certainly be done well. I think that the one challenge of talking about somebody else is that sometimes, as Leslie mentioned, we can feel like we know more about that coach or mentor than you. So start out with that person and then quickly switch into how that's had an effect on you and how it sort of changed your path.
Is it bad to have too many people read your essay? I would say no, as long as your voice isn't being diluted with everybody offering you all kinds of suggestions on how to over-edit. Again, I think we can certainly tell the difference when you have adults. We talk a different way sometimes, and, we laugh along the way. And again, this is not meant to be funny or to make fun of people. When there's a double space at the end of a sentence, we're like, oh, a parent wrote this, because You all don't do double spaces. My generation did. So that's a dead giveaway when an adult has done some over editing for you. So we don't want to lose your voice in the process. You can ask as many people as you want to take a look at it. Ask people you trust, people who know you well, but still make sure that your voice comes through. Don't let them change your mind about what you wanted to write about, I think.
Does your essay have to be a story of some sort? Not necessarily. I think that there's different ways to tell about an experience or lessons learned. So that really comes down to, what your essay is. A lot of them make sense to be a story, but we don't always hear stories.
What were some of the best essays you've read about? Olivia, that's a great question. And we could probably be here all night telling you about our favorite essays. I think one of my favorite was one of them that I used in the slideshow about the student who worked at a Quiznos Subway shop about making sandwiches. It was just a great essay because you got to learn a lot about how he thought through this kind of mundane experience of making sandwiches for customers. Another favorite one I had was somewhat a little poetic. It started off only me. Like I have all these weird things that happen to me that only happen to me. So there was but there was a life lesson after each of these what only me things. The student did a summer circus camp or something and got stuck in I think it's called the Spanish web. It's some kind of weird trapeze high wire thing. She got stuck because she didn't listen to the instructions. So the lesson she learned is sometimes you have to ask for help, but first you got to listen to what people are telling you. So I think it was a really clever way to kind of introduce lots of snippets about herself into one cohesive way by doing this theme of only me. So those are a couple of my favorites.
That's great. We could talk about this forever. An essay that I really loved was a student. This was not a US student, but they were on a vacation away from their home country, and they it was really cold, and somebody gave them like one of those hand warmer things, the little squares that you shake. And this student was from a tropical environment and was like shocked by this technology and was so curious about how it worked. How is this thing just cold and then you shake it and it warms me up for a couple of hours, that he took it apart and studied the process, the chemical process of the hand warmer. And it led to this whole process of sort of discovery and creativity for him. And I just loved getting a sense of sort of how his brain works and what he's interested in, and how he took an interest and really ran with it. Okay, next question. Would accepting gender identity be a good topic for a personal growth essay? It absolutely could be. Basically, any topic could be a good essay topic. It's just how you talk about it and how you talk about your personal growth. But seeing your personal growth in any respect is a wonderful thing to share in an essay, and that's something you can do through a lot of different topics.
We've got some general questions about Oberlin. I'm going through and trying to get all the essays questions first.
I see one from Carly. Is it okay to write about an activity you put in your activity section if you feel it's something that you can elaborate a lot more on and something that shows personal growth? Yes, it can be. We want to learn multiple things about you, and that could be an appropriate space to elaborate on something that's been really meaningful for you. Or maybe or you maybe want to share something else about you at that point. I think, as Leslie touched on, sometimes it's good to write a couple of essays. They don't have to be complete sort of perfect essays, but write about a couple of different topics and just see what you feel like really clicks. You also may have other opportunities to connect with Oberlin and the colleges you're applying to, such as through an interview or through informational sessions. And there's other times that you may be able to talk about those interests or achievements as well.
We have a student asking if the essay is confidential. So we share the essay after student enrolls with their academic advisor. So it's not confidential in that sense. It does not leave our office before then. And I will say through the years, we've received some essays and we thought a student is revealing something very personal, maybe a traumatic experience. And our concern then is, have they told somebody else, or are we the first person learning about this? So in those cases, occasionally I'll pick up the phone and call the college counselor and just say, have you seen the student's essay? I won't say what it was about or tip anything off, but just say, if they haven't, you might want to take a look at that if they're willing to share it with you. But, I was just kind of curious. So I don't divulge what's in it, but we don't want to have that, feel that responsibility that you're reaching out to us and we're not doing anything to follow up with you.
This is funny. A student says, if I, a high school senior, normally write with 2 spaces after each sentence, should I really not do that in my Common Application essay? You should be authentic. And if that is you, absolutely do it. I love that.
That's great. I love it too. We have a student who's scared that their writing ability is lacking and they'll cause issues in my essay. What advice do you have? So everybody, regardless if you are going to school remotely or if you're doing a hybrid, you're in person, you probably have a teacher who's teaching you English. And I would say ask them for some advice. If you have a college counselor, not all schools do, but if you have a college counselor, I would ask them for some advice. There are a lot of organizations that offer support for students in your communities. If you feel like you're going to struggle with this, I would reach out to people whose mission really is to help students get to college. But definitely ask people for help. When I said don't let your voice be diluted, that doesn't mean don't let somebody else have some input or say, really, you need a comma here or this sentence is a fragment. That's totally fine. And we would rather have you take care of that with somebody else before we get the chance to read it.
Question is, how can students best be honest in their essay without being excessively graphic? An example of great essays that showed vulnerability. I think that we hear about, we see vulnerability a lot through essays of students, joining a team and realizing that they have very little skill at that sport or doing really poorly on a test. And again, this is an opportunity to talk about growth. So you failed a test or you weren't picked for a team. So now what? How did you pivot or how did you overcome that challenge through work, but also through sort of the mental space that you are in. And so there's no problem with talking about vulnerability. And I think, that's part of demonstrating your personal growth.
I love this question. Is it bad to make an essay funny? I do think humor is a tough thing in a college essay because remember, there's one thing when you're telling a story live, we get your inflection, we get your facial expression. When we're reading it, it's on a computer screen, so we don't necessarily get that. And what you might think is really funny may not necessarily be funny to someone else. So sometimes I feel like humor can feel forced in reading an application. But again, this is the kind of thing where I would write something out and have somebody read it and have them tell you what they thought of it. Did they think it's funny? Did they smile while they were reading it or kind of chuckle? Then I think it's absolutely okay. But humor's kind of tough to get across sometimes.
So now we have a series of questions that are more about Oberlin generally. Please continue to send questions to the Q&A, whether they're about the essays or about Oberlin generally. We have about 8 more minutes and we will spend the rest of the time answering these questions. So a question I see here is, what kind of internships and research opportunities do students studying the social sciences get? So there's a huge amount of possibility in what you can do with a liberal arts degree, with what you can do with a social sciences degree. And so I would encourage you to be in touch with our office and ask for specific, to explain what your specific interests are, and we will give you more specific examples of internships and research and theses and first jobs in graduate school from your specific academic areas of interest. But for social sciences, you might see students getting internship in journalism, working at a think tank, working with a congressperson or a politician, working with researchers, working in a lab somewhere. There's a real range. It's hard to be specific without knowing your actual interests. So send an email to your admissions counselor.
Are there any merit-based scholarships? Yes, there are. I think Oberlin is one of the more generous institutions when it comes to awarding merit scholarships. What I love about the way we operate is there's no separate applications that you have to submit to be considered for merit scholarships. We figure everybody would like a merit scholarship who could get one, so your application for admission is sort of like doubling as a scholarship application. And I think, Sophie, I can't remember if I was reading questions. Did you mention the 10K commitment earlier?
I did not.
Okay, so one thing that we're really excited to share with everybody is that for students who apply this year and enroll in fall of 2021, Oberlin's giving you all a $10,000 merit scholarship. Because we know times are tough with the pandemic, we want to show you how much we value the students. So you automatically get $10,000. This is whether you're a domestic student, international student, transfer student. As long as you're a new student next year, you're getting $10,000. You will also be reviewed for other merit scholarships. So in the College of Arts and Sciences, there are academic scholarships. In the Conservatory of Music, there are what are called Dean's Talent Awards, and those are based on musical talent and the needs of studios. But again, you're not doing any separate applications for this. You'll find out about your applications with your offer of admission when you kind of get the proverbial thick envelope with your financial aid office, your scholarship letter, and your offer of admission. But everybody does get that $10,000, so that's pretty exciting.
Next question is, do you have to be accepted into the conservatory by audition in order to minor in it? So as a College of Arts and Sciences student, you can minor in the conservatory or take classes in the conservatory. To do either, you do not have to be accepted to the conservatory. The same goes for the conservatory students. They can take classes in the College of Arts and Sciences or minor in the College of Arts and Sciences. Though if you want to do two majors or 2 degrees in the conservatory and the college, at that point you have to apply to both and be accepted to both. That's called being a double degree student, and you would have to apply to the college as well as the conservatory and of course be accepted to both of them. But just to minor, nope, no audition, and you don't have to decide that until you get to campus or start that process till you get to campus.
So what does Oberlin think of undecided? When I talk about applying to Oberlin, I feel like about a quarter of our students probably come in undecided. And I don't think that means you have no idea what you're interested in. Usually it means you're interested in so many different things and you don't want to narrow yourself down just yet. So absolutely undecided is fine. You don't have to declare a major till the end of your second year. So you have plenty of time to kind of figure out what gets you excited. If you're like most Oberlin students, you'll end up double majoring or a major minor combination because our students really tend to be very academically excited about what they're doing at Oberlin.
Stella asks, how diverse is Oberlin's student body? So Oberlin is a diverse institution. We really have an emphasis on bringing the world to our campus. So some sort of statistics is that 26% of our students are students of color. That's self-identified student of color. So 26% of our students are students of color. 13% of our students are international students. 6% of our students are from the state of Ohio. We have students from, I think, 48 different states and about 48 different countries at the moment. And we really have representation throughout the United States and throughout the world. We really want you to be in a learning environment of some people that are similar to you in interests and what their family was like and what their high school was like and what you want to do with your life and what your favorite ice cream flavor is. Mostly we want students to be very different from you in all of those ways. And the diversity of our student body is a really important way that our students are challenged and grow during their time at Oberlin.
I'm sorry, Sophie, I'm scrolling down because there's so many questions. I was trying to type some answers really quickly to get to all these because we only have a few more minutes together. Someone's asking about the gender ratio at the college and the conservatory. Altogether, Oberlin is about 57% female, 43% male. That's overall Oberlin. I honestly don't know the breakdown specifically from one to the other because we are one Oberlin. We're all one campus. So I don't know that it makes a difference if it's college or con.
Sorry, I'm just putting some links. So I just included all of you the link to the virtual visit website. On there, you can register for our next Tuesday talk, which is going to be the last Tuesday of the month, and it's about affording a liberal arts education and all about financial aid. We're going to have a new series of Tuesday talks in October. But just as exciting is being able to sign up for other info sessions, interviews, and the conservatory also does their own sort of info sessions called conservatory chats a couple times per week at different times as well. So that's an opportunity to learn more about potentially doing a double major or being a conservatory student. I can also include our virtual campus tour playlist I will include here as well. Okay. So a student's asking if this session will be recorded. Yes, so all of these sessions are recorded. You can find them on the Oberlin Vimeo and YouTube channels within about a week after the session itself.
Typing furiously, trying to get some of these questions here while you're talking.
Does Oberlin get any guest speakers on campus? Yes, we have a lot of guest speakers during a typical year, and then even in COVID times, we have several guest speakers on a regular basis, including a couple per week. And they run the gamut from former politicians to journalists to people working in public policy. The student has political science interests, as well as people who worked in foreign government and foreign affairs as well. So there's very frequently speakers, and they're typically open to the whole campus.
I'm going to go back up to a question about the essay, since that was our topic tonight. What are some good tactics for editing? Again, I would say have somebody else use grammar check, on your computer. Don't rely on it. Have somebody else read it for you. And as I mentioned before, if you read it backwards, you're going to catch a lot of typos that way. It seems very tedious, but I'd rather do that than send off an essay that has some errors in it.
Okay, everybody. Well, I am sorry to leave some questions unanswered, but thank you all so much for being here. It was wonderful to spend some time with you this evening, for those of you who are in North America, and to talk to you about the essay. We hope to see you on other Tuesday talks and information sessions and interviews, and look forward to reading your application in the months to come. Thank you so much. Be well, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.